We are here in conversation with Mr. Jayant Sinha. So thanks for speaking to us at ET. Now we will be following you shortly on your campaign trail. But I saw you doing a rap video. A great way to connect to the youth, isn't it?
Absolutely. India is a very young country, and in particular Jharkhand and Hazaribagh is very, very young. Some 75% of the people here are under the age of 40. So you have to connect with them, you have to be able to build bridges with them, and so we do what we have to.
I'm here in Hazaribagh for the first time. The polls will be starting from the 29th of April.
In Jharkhand,
yeah,
yes.
In Jharkhand. How are things looking so far on ground? What's been the kind of response that you've received?
You know, it's very different from Delhi. When you're in Delhi, you are sort of in a Delhi echo chamber. The moment you get out to where India lives, which is in our rural areas, in our smaller cities, you find that the incredible enthusiasm that people have for the Honorable Prime Minister, for the Bharatiya Janata Party, really sweeps you away. And here in Hazaribagh, of course, as you come out on the campaign trail, you'll see the enthusiasm that people have. But we are very sure in Jharkhand that we'll win 14 out of the 14 seats, and Hazaribagh, I'm sure, will be a thumping victory.
While you are saying that Jharkhand you'll win all 14 seats, last time in the 2014 elections, 12 out of 14 seats the BJP got. But this time the Mahagathbandan is getting together. There is an alliance of the Congress, the Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, the JVM, as well as RJD. Do you see that as a formidable opposition, so to say?
Absolutely not. And the reason is that our popularity since 2014 has gone up, and it's gone up because we have delivered on the ground. And when you travel, you'll see everybody has got a bank account, everybody has got a shauchalaya, everybody has got a gas cylinder, people have got ration cards. So we have delivered on the ground, and the actions that the Honorable Prime Minister has taken, whether it was demonetization, whether it was the airstrikes after Pulwama, those actions have really endeared him to people and built a confidence and trust among the people and him, which is, I think, unmatched in Indian political history. So those are the factors on the ground as you travel among the people that you clearly see, and that's why no matter what the coalitions are, no matter what the Mahagathbandan does, it's not going to make any difference because the people have made up their mind, and that is an extraordinary thing that people need to realize, is that everybody has thought about the alternatives, and the people are so far ahead of the analysts, about the commentators and the experts. They are very clear they want Modi ji to win.
Here in Jharkhand, the Congress's main plank has been Nyay. They say that Nyay is going to benefit almost 45% of the population in Jharkhand. How would you counter that narrative?
जो न्याय इनका है ये अन्याय है, क्योंकि इनके पास वो साधन ही नहीं है. They don't have the resources to implement the Nyay Yojana, which is why it is the Anyay Yojana. They're going to have to print money, and they're going to have to raise taxes on the middle class, and they're going to drive up inflation. So it's very clear to people that the Congress has mismanaged the economy multiple times. Everybody remembers 2014 when inflation was running at 10 or 12%, महंगाई चरम पे थी, and they don't trust the Congress. ये तो बस बातें हैं, and कई बार लोग मुझे कहते हैं कि ये लोग दिन में नारे देते हैं और रात को इनकी दलाली और वंशवादी चलती है. So people don't believe the Congress, and they can say what they want, but they just have no credibility among the people.
Mr. Sinha, because you said ये देश का चुनाव है, and which is why the focus on nationalism, the focus on Hindutva. But is the BJP from the 2014 elections, when the main poll plank was development, is the BJP kind of shifting its focus?
Not at all. I think even in 2014 and in 2019, really we have emphasized 2 or 3 main pillars. One, of course, has been विकास, सुविधाएं. सब लोगों को जो उनके अधिकार हैं वो मिलने चाहिए, धरातल पे विकास उतरना चाहिए, and we've delivered on that. The second is सुशासन. Obviously, you came out of a situation in 2014 where we were just beset with corruption, with scandals and so on. And then, of course, देश की सुरक्षा, which we have demonstrated through the airstrikes, through the surgical strikes, and the tough stand that we have taken against terrorism and left-wing extremism. And so when you put that package together, when you put these 3 pillars together of suvidhaएं, Sushasan and Suraksha, as I say, that is an extremely appealing package to people, and they get it, they understand, because they can see it in their daily lives.
On that note, I must also ask you, because you said good governance, reforms, the kind of reforms that have taken place in the last 5 years is also something that the BJP is taking forth with them in this election. What is going to be the agenda for the next five years?
The Honorable Prime Minister has said very clearly that, पिछले 5 साल में हम गड्ढे भर रहे थे, अब आवश्यकताओं को पूरा कर रहे थे, अब हम आकांक्षाओं को पूरा करेंगे. That is, the next 5 years are going to be about aspirations. We are going to deliver on building a country that is going to be among the top economies in the world. We are going to build a country that is going to be globally competitive and innovation driven. We are going to create high quality jobs for our young people, and we are going to create a country we are going to be proud of. In the last 5 years, we've had to deal with a lot of issues and structural problems that came from 10 years of UPA governance. We've addressed them. We've moved forward very well. Now you're going to see a vibrant, exciting and developed India. I mean, take aviation itself. In aviation, we need somewhere in the region of 3 to 5 lakh crores worth of investments just simply in airports. We're going to need a similar amount as far as planes are concerned. So aviation itself in the next 10 years can absorb 10 lakh crores. The same is true for railways, the same is true for highways, the same is true for our urban environment. So all of that has to be mobilized, and we have put in place the legal and regulatory framework to make that possible.
The private sector that is still, keeping its purse tight, what is going to change for them so that they park in funds?
Well, one of the most important things that's going to happen is we're going to have a stable and a very forward-looking and innovative government that's going to be in place come May 23rd. So I think that's going to unleash a lot of investment. And the building blocks that we've put in place for a globally competitive, innovation-driven economy now are fully functioning. Whether it is the Monetary Policy Committee, which has led to stable inflation and lower interest rates and a stable currency, whether it is what we've done through the bankruptcy code, what we've done in the real estate side, the kind of measures we've put in place in various infrastructure sectors, like for example in renewables or in aviation. All of these building blocks are in place now, which create a strong foundation for investment.
You are saying the building blocks are there, yet people are complaining and they're saying that there is a job crisis that's there in India. A lot of senior union ministers of the government are saying that the entire issue of job crisis is a myth. The economists are up in arms. How would you justify, the issue of data credibility, the issue of jobs not being there?
The Honorable Finance Minister has clarified all of these issues around data credibility, and of course, we will have high quality, robust data on employment as soon as all of the statistical exercise is completed, so that it is in fact credible data. So that of course will happen. In the meanwhile, let's come back to this question of jobs. Again, as I said, the reality is that you are not able to get in the informal sector people for less than 300, 400 rupees a day. And the reason is because there is robust job creation. People have got jobs. Now, really, the challenge is to be able to ensure that we have people moving from the informal sector to high quality jobs in the formal sector. That in fact is what we are working on, and that is what people's aspirations are. But even there, as far as high quality jobs in the formal sector are concerned, if you look at the EPFO data, that continues to be robust month on month. You're seeing a tremendously strong movement of people from the informal sector to the formal sector, and a creation of jobs in many, many high growth industries like in renewables, aviation and so on.
How does one look at the current crisis in Jet Airways? There are 20,000 jobs that have been lost. It's a really sad state of affairs. There are people who are not being able to pay their EMIs, not being able to send their kids to school, pay their tuition fees. What is it that the government is doing? How are you approaching this entire crisis?
No, we want to make sure that the very, very capable and talented employees of Jet Airways are absorbed in the aviation ecosystem as quickly as possible, and that they have a very good and soft landing. So we are very, very focused on ensuring good employment prospects for them. The good news in all of this, Ruchi, is the fact that the industry is growing. There's tremendous long-term demand for aviation services, and so I'm very sure that all the talented and capable employees of Jet Airways will find a very good home, whether at Jet Airways or in other companies as well. And of course, this is how markets work. What happens is that resources, people move from less competitive companies to more competitive companies. And ultimately what we have to do in India is we have to build a globally competitive economy where the most competitive, most efficient companies are the ones that thrive and succeed.
But some of these employees have not been paid for the last 4 months. I mean, why is the government keeping a hands-off approach in this matter?
Ruchi, it's very, very clear that governments intervene in the economy only when there are systemic risks. This is a well-accepted consensus around the world. And you have to distinguish between ILFS, which would have led to contagion and a systemic set of issues, and Jet Airways, which has operated in a very, very smooth manner within the existing legal and regulatory framework, and where there are no systemic risks. For us, handling the aviation system, the important thing is to ensure that this market disruption moves through the system in a smooth manner, that all the assets and all the people are absorbed efficiently and well without too much friction within the existing legal and regulatory framework, and that's what we've done. Capacity has come in quite quickly to absorb the Jet Airways capacity that's gone out of the system. Fares have remained relatively stable, and all the passenger inconvenience, refunds, cancellations, we are proceeding on that to ensure that passengers are not inconvenienced in any way. So markets do work, and we've got to let markets work. When governments operate, they have to establish a legal and regulatory framework, and then within that the various players have to conduct themselves.
But the gap is pretty glaring. I mean, I know what you're saying, but the kind of jobs that have been lost are about 20,000 versus a SpiceJet or some other airlines that will be either picking up planes or cabin crew or other stuff, which, there's a huge gap in there.
No, Ruchi, I think you're taking a very short-term view, right? There is a transition process that happens, and during the transition process, of course, there are challenges that have to be done. But whatever people's dues are, I think will have to be met in some fashion or the other. But give it some time, and once you give it some time, you'll find that everything will be very smoothly absorbed. I'll take you back to Kingfisher. After Kingfisher shut down, everybody got absorbed into various other airlines, and they continue to have great careers. So just give it some time and you'll find that the process of absorption will happen quite smoothly.
There are people who died as well, Mr. Sinha. There are people who could not pay their EMIs.
I feel terrible. I feel very sorry and terrible for that. And of course, the goal is to be able to ensure that everybody is protected and everybody is safe. But we live in an open market economy, Ruchi, and it is important for each individual to think about the fact that they have to themselves be able to have appropriate protection, buffers and so on, because yes, companies do go in and out of business, and that is a fact of an open market economy. That's how open economies work. Companies succeed, some companies don't succeed, and we all have to recognize that.
Let me also ask you then, because the reason that I'm asking you this question, the banks first said, and in fact SBI was leading the consortium, they said they'll be pumping in 1,500 crore rupees, but that money never really came in. Why did the banks develop cold feet? I'm sure because the government owns a large part of these PSU banks. What really changed for them?
It's very clear for the banks that they have to make decisions in their commercial interest and in using their commercial judgment. As you remember, when I was in the finance ministry, we had a very important conclave in Pune, which was back in 2015. And we made it very clear at that point, and exactly the Gyan Sangam that we had in Pune, and the Honorable Finance Minister and the Honorable Prime Minister made it very clear that in our government, banks would be free to do what they think was right in their commercial interest, and they are responsible to their stakeholders, to their depositors, and they should do what they think is commercially the right thing to do. And that's exactly what they're doing as far as Jet Airways is concerned. And we have to let them do that, because that's how we create accountability in the system. That's how we reduce the price of risk in the system. So government needs to establish a legal and regulatory framework, and then various players have to conduct themselves accordingly. Otherwise, what happens is, if there is arbitrary intervention by the authorities, you drive up the price of risk, you create very opaque and arbitrary decision making, and then it's very difficult for people to understand how they need to conduct themselves.
You know, since you said that there will be people who will be absorbed in other airlines, and there is no need to worry, things will become better from here on, even if Jet Airways comes back. But precedent says that once an airline is shut, it never comes back. Look at what happened to Kingfisher or Paramount or many more other airlines as well. Because there is no such precedent, what are the chances that Jet would perhaps fly?
I think that's a question you have to ask the banks, you have to ask those who are bidding for Jet Airways. They have to take into account the value in Jet Airways right now, you know, how much they have to bid for it and so on, and so let the bank-led resolution process unfold.
Under your leadership here at the Aviation Ministry, you started the Udan program as well, which was really to connect each and every part of India, make flying more affordable. With Jet Airways collapsing, and you know, since we were talking about that there is no such precedent, what impact do you see that this is going to have on the entire aviation sector?
Let's take a step back, Ruchi, and let's try and understand how much capacity has come into the system. Jet had some 70 or 80 planes flying domestically. From the numbers that Mr. Karola, who's the aviation secretary, has given us, it seems that 55 or 60 planes have already come in to backfill those 70 or 80 planes.
They'll be coming in the next 2
No,
months.
50 in the last 6 to 8 months. That's what's happened. 70 to 80 planes of Jet have left the aviation system, but 50 to 60 planes have entered the aviation system. So net, we are down only 20 right now. Of course, it's the lean season, so we've absorbed it without any increase in fares. At the same time, if you look over the next 2 or 3 months, if you look to the next 2 or 3 months, you will see that there's a tremendous number of planes now coming in. So I think the capacity that has left the system has been more than backfilled, and there's new capacity that's come into the system. Now, if Jet comes back, and we are all hoping and wishing that it does, then we will have plenty of capacity to ensure further growth in the system. And of course, all of our other airlines are continuing to add capacity. So I think we are going to get through this fairly comfortably. As far as Udan is concerned, Jet did participate in a number of the Udan routes, but of course they were not as large a participant as some of the others. So I think when Jet's capacity comes back, as well as other capacity comes back, we'll be able to get those routes going.
But the prices of, the ticket prices were really soaring in the sky at one point of time. You're saying this did not have much of an impact, but that's not really...
No, Ruchi, I'll have to reject what you're saying there, because we monitor fares very, very carefully. And what we found was, and we did all the analysis around it, what we found was that fares did not really go up that much. Now, it is true that there is one bucket of fares, which is the absolute last minute fares. That represents typically only 1 or 2% of the total tickets booked on a plane. And there, in certain routes, yes, there was a spike, but that spike didn't last very long and it has moderated again. But again, what we tell everybody is, make sure you book your flights sufficiently in advance. If you book 3 weeks in advance in India, typically you're getting the most affordable fares in the world.
Let me also ask you, since you are looking at what is happening in the Jet saga very closely, there are reports that Reliance is also one of the parties that is interested. Have they evinced interest to the Ministry of Civil Aviation?
The resolution process is being led by the banks.
So there's no, have they reached out? Because that's
the
what
banks are leading the resolution process, so you should ask them that question.
After Jet collapsed, a lot of people were questioning the MRO costs, the high taxes on ATF, the airport charges. Do you think, while hyper competitiveness in the aviation space is of course to be blamed, there are other factors as well which perhaps need a review?
Ruchi, I can't comment on the competitive strategies of individual players. The fact of the matter is that yes, some of our costs are high. Certainly ATF taxes are high, and we've of course spoken to the GST Council many times. We've given our opinion that ATF taxation should come under GST. We are constantly working to reduce costs for passengers, and there are a number of measures we have taken to do that as well. Udan is one example of that. So our efforts are always to make flying as affordable as possible. In fact, our overall slogan is flying for all. Sab ude, sab jude. So that is really our goal. But all of that being said, please understand that fares in India are among, if not the most affordable in the world right now. So our passengers are getting a fantastic bargain when they fly, and that's what's driving a lot of the growth in the industry. And we have very capable players that are able to generate tremendous value even with these very affordable fares, and that's how an open market economy works. The most competitive players are the ones that thrive. And if you look at the market capitalization of the most successful players, you'll see it's extraordinary, right? So they've created a tremendous amount of value in a very short period of time. So value is being created. And passengers are getting a great deal, and the markets are very competitive, and we are obviously operating a safe, convenient aviation system. So those are the policy goals, and that's what's in the public interest, and that's how we think about our job.
Since we are talking about the aviation sector, I have to ask you, there are also news reports that say that for Air India, they will have to service debt of close to 9,000 crore rupees by FY20. Once the government comes in, this time around we did not see Air India, I mean, after getting 17 expression of interest, finally no bids were really put in. What is going to be the game plan for Air India, because this has been one of the big reform
well, that's obviously for the next government and leadership to decide. But as far as our government is concerned, we made it very clear. The Honourable Prime Minister, the Honourable Finance Minister have made it very clear that we are committed to the strategic disinvestment of Air India. So as far as our policies are concerned, we are quite clear about it.
Since we are talking about the aviation sector, let me ask you, and this is going to be my last question. In Air India, we saw 17 expression of interest, not a single bidder finally coming in. Even in Jet Airways, TPG, Etihad as well as NIF are the only serious consortium of bidders. When you're saying that Indian market is an attractive market, why is it that in a buyer's market?
No, Ruchi, I think that is wrong analysis. Please understand how players need to think about a market, and when you think about a market, you really have to think about how do I create value? Do I have the right business model to create value? What is my cost structure like? Do I have the right financing to make it happen? And if there are business models that are ineffective, that are not going to be competitive in a particular industry environment, nobody wants to take on that business model. People want a business model that will enable them to compete and thrive. We have players with business models that are competing and thriving. Now, if I'm an investor, now I'm going to put my hat on as an investor. If I'm an investor, why am I going to assume a business model that does not allow me to create value? So any investor is going to make a very rational decision about returns that they can generate. There are winning business models and not winning business models. You obviously want to, as an investor, make an investment on a business model that is going to be a winning business model. And you can see that in the share prices of the companies that are doing well. Those share prices are going up. Investors are betting on them. Investors are not betting on business models that they think are not going to be competitive and value creating in the long run. So we've got to really separate that out.
From the government's perspective, will the government let jets sink?
Again, as we've said, the government's role is very clear. Unless there is a systemic risk, the government's job in an open market economy, and we have followed that very clearly, and you can see that in many other companies which have gone through the bankruptcy process, is to establish the legal and regulatory framework and then let the various players, whether it's the company and its promoters, equity holders, financial institutions, other stakeholders, vendors, suppliers, it's for that ecosystem of players to decide for themselves what is the right way for them to move forward with a particular company. Please understand, in a market economy, companies come and companies go, and that is exactly how it should be if we want to build a globally competitive economy. Only the most competitive players should survive and move forward, because that's the only way we are going to have an efficient, cost-effective economy that can compete with the rest of the world. The rest of the world is not standing still. If our companies are not providing inputs, or our companies are not providing products and services that are not globally competitive, that are not cost-effective, how is the rest of the economy going to work? So we have to ensure that we put in place the processes that result in companies, that result in products and services that enable India and India's citizens to be globally competitive and thrive and flourish.
All right, on that note, many thanks for taking your time out and speaking to us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.